There was no final fight, no dramatic exit. She didn't say no. She just never chose you. And that quiet, unspoken decision has echoed inside you ever since, leaving a void where a clear answer should have been. You can wait for the clarity that will never arrive. Not because they are cruel, but because to them, there was never a choice to be made. This is the ache of the almost, the haunt of the could have been. It's a peculiar kind of suffering, one that doesn't arrive like a storm but seeps in like a fog, slowly obscuring everything. It lacks the sharp, clean edges of a direct rejection. A no is a slammed door. It stings, it echoes, but you know where you stand. You are on the outside, and the boundary is clear. Her silence, however, is a door left slightly ajar, an invitation to wait in a hallway of endless, draining hope. You find yourself standing there, hand outstretched, not knowing if you should push the door open or simply walk away. The not knowing is its own form of torment. This pain is rooted in the most fundamental of human needs, the need to belong, to be seen, to be chosen. As researcher Brené Brown has uncovered, this drive for connection is not a weakness. It is woven into our biology. When we aren't chosen, it doesn't just feel like a simple preference. It triggers a primal, wordless fear that we are fundamentally unworthy of connection itself. It awakens a deep and ancient shame that whispers, "You are outside the circle. You do not belong here." This feeling is magnified by a silent, one-sided agreement you made without ever saying it aloud. Dr. Robert Glover might recognize this as a covert contract, an unconscious belief that if you perform correctly, you will be rewarded. You held up your end of a bargain she never knew existed. You believed, deep down, that if you were attentive enough, giving enough, and perfect enough, you would eventually earn her love and approval as a just reward for your efforts. You poured your energy into becoming the right answer to a question she was never asking. Her silence, then, is not just a lack of response. It is the brutal invalidation of your entire strategy for belonging. It tells you that your effort, your devotion, your very way of being, was not enough to even warrant a decision. You weren't actively rejected, you were simply overlooked. And in that quiet dismissal, in that profound invisibility, the agony feels infinite. It's the pain of erasure, not of defeat. You weren't a competitor who lost the race. You were a spectator who thought they were running it. The pain you feel isn't from a shipwreck. It's from constantly watching a ghost ship on the horizon. A declared ending, a final goodbye, is a vessel sinking beneath the waves. It is a violent, definite tragedy. You can witness it, you can scream at the injustice of it, and you can eventually mourn its descent into the deep. There is a finality to the wreckage. But your loss is different, more ethereal, more haunting. You see its silhouette in the morning fog, a constant, shimmering promise just out of reach. You squint your eyes and convince yourself it's sailing toward your shore, investing every ounce of your hope in its eventual arrival. Every dawn, you return to the same cold spot on the beach, searching for a sign that today will be the day it finally docks. This ambiguity is a phantom anchor. It doesn't hold you in place with heavy iron, but with the weightless, unbreakable chain of maybe. It keeps you shackled to the coastline of your own life, unable to set sail for new lands or even turn your back to the sea. You cannot mourn a loss that is not official. How can you grieve for a ship that, in your mind, has never definitively sailed away? It has just remained perpetually on the horizon, close enough to see, but too far to ever reach. This is why the ambiguity hurts more than a clean break. A rejection is a storm that passes, leaving you to rebuild. This is the endless, oppressive humidity before the storm, a state of waiting that drains your energy and blurs your vision. This state of emotional limbo is a unique form of torment. It forces you to live in the space between a memory and a fantasy, never fully present in your own reality because a part of your soul is forever out at sea, scanning the horizon. You are haunted not by what was, but by the relentless ghost of what could be. And so you wait, mistaking the paralysis of hope for the virtue of loyalty. While your own life becomes a forgotten landscape behind you, you operated under an unspoken contract, a silent agreement you drafted and signed in the privacy of your own heart. In this contract, your affection, your late-night conversations when she was lonely, your emotional energy, and your unwavering support were all currency. You believed you were making deposits, investing in a future commitment you both were building toward. Each act of kindness, each moment of patience, each time you set your own needs aside to tend to hers, it was another payment into an account you were certain was held in both your names. You kept a meticulous, invisible ledger of your devotion, believing that at some point, the balance would be recognized, and the relationship would be the rightful return on your investment. You were paying for a future you believed was for sale, and you were a dedicated, honest buyer. The confusion you feel now is the profound shock of a deal gone void. It is the disorienting feeling of discovering you have been pouring all your resources into an account that was never actually opened. You were the only signatory on this agreement. She never agreed to the terms because, from her perspective, there was no contract at all. The care you offered was a gift she accepted, not a payment she was obligated to match. The crushing weight you feel is the burden of an emotional debt that only you acknowledge. You paid in full for a future she never agreed to sell, leaving you standing alone in a marketplace of one, holding a receipt for a purchase that never existed. The pain isn't just the loss of your investment. It's the quiet shame of realizing you were bidding in an auction against no one, for a prize that was never on the block. You weren't a partner in a transaction. You were just a generous giver, and you mistook her gratitude for reciprocation. You told yourself you were just being patient. You labeled your stillness as loyalty, your waiting as a sign of profound character. But that hope, over time, twisted from a guiding light into the very bars of a cage. You believed you were in a waiting room, a sterile, temporary space before the main event of your life would be called. You sat politely, watching the clock, certain that any moment, a door would open and your name would be announced. You didn't realize that the waiting room was the final destination. There was no one on the other side of the door. The silence wasn't a prelude. It was the entire performance. Hope became the justification for your paralysis, the noble reason you gave yourself for not moving, for not living. Felt righteous to wait for her. Felt like love. But it was a prison you decorated with the wallpaper of devotion. Like someone holding a heavy door open during a relentless storm, you believed you were performing a heroic, essential act. You stood your ground, muscles straining, letting the wind and rain lash at you, all to protect a space for her. You imagined her just beyond the tree-line, running toward the shelter you so dutifully provided. You were so focused on the empty doorway, so fixated on the act of holding on, that you failed to notice the storm of your own life raging around you. You didn't see the opportunities that were washed away, the other paths that were flooded, the years that passed like seasons in the squall. The most devastating part is not that she never arrived. It's the slow, quiet realization that she was never on her way. She was never caught in the storm. She was somewhere else entirely, warm and dry, oblivious to your sacrifice. And you were left standing there, guarding an empty passage, becoming a prisoner of your own vigil, mistaking the ache in your arms for the feeling of love. Your relationship was never truly with her. It was with the possibility of her. It was with the shimmering mirage of who she could be, what you could be together, a future you carefully constructed in the quietest rooms of your mind. This is a profound and deeply isolating form of loneliness. It is the quiet madness of a person who sets a table for two every single night, only to sit across from an empty chair. You place the silverware just so. You light a candle, and you wait. The silence from that chair isn't peaceful. It is deafening. It is a dense, heavy presence that consumes all the air in the room. It screams of your solitude. You hold entire conversations in your head, imagining her responses, her laughter, her touch. You were not in a relationship with a person. You were in a relationship with your own longing. You didn't fall for her. You fell for the potential she represented. She was a blank canvas onto which you painted your deepest desires for connection and belonging. You saw a flicker of warmth and imagined a bonfire. You heard a kind word and imagined a lifetime of understanding. The emptiness that is consuming you now is the stark, brutal realization that you have been dining alone this whole time. The grief is not for the loss of a companion, but for the shattering of the illusion that you ever truly had one. The person you miss never actually existed. The person you miss was a beautiful ghost you built from fragments of hope and your own desperate need to be seen. And now, as you sit at that table, the only thing left is the cold, hard wood of the empty chair, a monument to a love that was only ever real for one. It's the loneliness of knowing your heart was broken by a phantom. You exhausted yourself trying to find the key. You were convinced her heart was a combination lock, and that with enough effort, with enough intelligence, you could figure out the right sequence of words, actions, and emotions to make it finally click open. So you tried everything. You became a student of her moods, a detective searching for clues in her silences. You tried being funnier, then more serious. You were more attentive when you sensed she was pulling away, then more distant when you worried you were too much. You twisted the dial of your own personality, trying every number you could imagine, believing with each new attempt that you were just one digit away from unlocking her. This tireless effort became your obsession. The struggle itself felt meaningful, as if the sheer force of your will could eventually wear down the lock and grant you entry. You told yourself that love required work, and this felt like the most important work of your life. The devastating truth, the one that settles in your bones with a cold, heavy stillness, is that it was never a combination lock that required your cleverness. It was simply a door bolted from the other side. There was no key for you to find, no secret code for you to crack, because you were never meant to have access. Your relentless struggle wasn't a testament to your failure or your lack of worth. It was a sign that you were at the wrong door entirely. You were trying to enter a house where you were not invited. The exhaustion you feel now is the deep, cellular fatigue that comes from fighting a battle you could never win. It's the quiet surrender of a soldier who finally realizes he has been attacking an impenetrable fortress. The relief, however bitter, is in putting down your arms. It's in the final, painful acceptance that you can stop searching for a key that was never forged for you. There is a name for this suspended state of grief, this purgatory of the heart. Psychologists call it ambiguous loss. It is a term for a loss that remains unclear, unresolved, and without official verification. It's the torment of mourning someone who is still alive, still out there in the world, their presence a constant, painful reminder of their absence from your life. It's grieving a relationship that never officially ended because it never officially began. You were standing on a train platform, waiting for a train that was never scheduled to stop at your station. You watched the clock, checked the timetable again and again, convinced there must be some mistake. Other trains arrive and depart, carrying people to their destinations, but you remain steadfast, your gaze fixed on the empty track where your train should be. Your vigil feels like devotion, but it is a form of self-imprisonment. This is more than heartbreak. It is a state of profound psychological suspension. You are frozen, unable to move forward because there has been no clear event to move on from. You cannot fully grieve because to grieve requires an ending, a body, a final farewell. But your loss has no finality. The person is still physically present in the world, just not emotionally present in yours. This contradiction creates a phantom limb syndrome of the heart. You feel the deep, persistent ache of something that has been amputated, but you can't convince your mind it's truly gone because there is no scar. This is the quiet, maddening torment that leaves you stranded between letting go and holding on. It is a dissonance that can make you feel like you are losing your mind. You question your own perception. Did you imagine it all? Was it ever real? This ambiguity denies you the catharsis of grief, leaving the wound permanently open, unable to heal because it is constantly being re-injured by the simple, brutal fact that they are still out there, and you are still here waiting. You believe her failure to choose you created this feeling of profound invisibility. But what if it only revealed it? What if her silence was not a weapon, but a perfect, polished mirror, reflecting back the parts of yourself you had already silenced long ago? Think of it. Think of the times you held your tongue when you disagreed, the needs you swallowed because you didn't want to be a burden, the boundaries you never drew for fear of being difficult. You learned, somewhere in your past, to make yourself smaller, quieter, and more agreeable, hoping that this self-effacement would make you more desirable, easier to love. You expertly trained yourself to take up less space, and so you became easy to overlook. You abandoned yourself first quietly, in 1,000 small moments that preceded her. Her silence didn't create the wound of invisibility. It simply poured salt on it, making you finally feel the sting of a hurt you've carried your whole life. The profound emptiness you feel now is not just the space she left behind. It is the sound of your own abandoned needs, your own forgotten dreams, your own silenced voice finally echoing in the vacancy she created. You had made a hollow space inside yourself to accommodate her, and now that she is gone, you are left to confront the void you created. Her lack of a yes did not make you feel unworthy. It confirmed a deep, hidden fear you've always had that you were not. This is why it hurts so intensely. You are not just mourning her. You are mourning all the pieces of yourself you gave away for free, only to discover they were never wanted in the first place. Her silence was a passive reflection of your own. She could not hear you because you had already learned to speak in whispers. She could not choose you because you had never fully chosen yourself. You treated every interaction like an audition for a role you desperately wanted. Every text was a carefully rehearsed line. Every shared moment a scene where you had to hit your marks perfectly. You were constantly on stage, under the glare of a spotlight you imagined was always on you, trying to prove that you were worthy of being cast as the person in her life. You delivered your best monologues. You showed your most charming side. You hid your flaws backstage, and then you would retreat into the wings, holding your breath, waiting for the casting decision. This life of perpetual performance is utterly exhausting. It leaves no room for authenticity because you believe your true self is not enough to win the part. So you play a character, the attentive one, the funny one, the strong one, hoping that one of these portrayals will finally be the one she is looking for. The anxiety of the audition never ends because you are never given the security of a contract. You are always proving yourself, always on trial. The final, cruel plot twist wasn't that you didn't get the part. It wasn't that your performance was lacking or that another actor was better suited. The final act reveals that the role you were auditioning for was never open to begin with. It had been cast long before you ever stepped onto the stage, or perhaps the director had no intention of ever filling it. You were never a candidate. You were just part of the audience, watching a play you mistook for your own life. You were so invested in the drama on stage that you didn't realize you were sitting in the dark with everyone else. The profound relief, however bitter and painful, comes from this realization. It means you can finally stop performing. You can stop reciting your lines to an empty room. You can walk out of the theater, letting the silence of the empty stage be the final sound, and step out into the real, unscripted world, where you no longer have to audition for your own existence. The hardest thing to release isn't the memory of her. It's not the echo of her laugh, the warmth of a shared moment, or the ghost of her presence in your quiet apartment. The hardest thing to let go of, the thing your hands are still desperately clinging to, is the future you built in your mind. You are not grieving a past. You are grieving blueprints. You are mourning the loss of a house that was never going to be built, on a piece of land you never actually owned. In the silent workshop of your hope, you designed every room. You chose the color of the walls, the view from the window, the placement of the furniture. You imagined the life you would live within those walls. The quiet Sunday mornings, the shared holidays, the comfort of knowing you had a place to come home to. That future became more real, more vibrant, and more solid to you than the fragile, ambiguous present you were actually living in. Healing, then, does not begin when you forget her. It begins when you finally find the strength to fold up the blueprints. It begins with the painful acceptance that the architectural plans you cherished were a masterful work of fiction, drawn by your own hand. The path forward requires you to walk away from that empty lot, to stop staring at the vacant ground and lamenting what could have been. You must allow the fantasy to crumble. The pain of this moment is immense, because letting go of that future feels like letting go of the only thing that gave the waiting meaning. But that meaning was an illusion. The only architecture you can truly control is your own. The first step is to put down the plans for a life with her and stand, for the first time, on the solid ground of your own life, however empty it may feel right now. As the work of Brené Brown suggests, the ultimate antidote to this specific pain is not to finally be chosen by another, but to finally choose yourself. True belonging is not something you can negotiate or earn from the outside world. It is not a prize to be won after a long and painful audition. It is the quiet, unbreakable practice of belonging to yourself so deeply that you no longer need to hustle for your worth in the cold, indifferent marketplaces of others. This experience, this profound pain of not being chosen, is the ultimate brutal catalyst for that realization. It is a harsh mercy. It forces you to confront the ways you have outsourced your sense of value, the ways you have looked to others to tell you that you are real, that you matter. It holds up a mirror to the most wounded part of you and refuses to look away. In the words of Gabor Mate, the original trauma is often not what happened to us, but how we were forced to abandon ourselves in the process. The path forward is not about getting her to finally see your worth. It is not about proving her wrong or waiting for an apology that will never come. It is about you finally and irrevocably choosing yourself back. It is about choosing to walk away from the agony of ambiguity, from the ghost ships and locked doors of your own making. It is about choosing to honor your own needs, even when it feels foreign and selfish. And it is about choosing to believe, in the silent spaces of your own heart, that you are worthy of a love that doesn't require a constant, exhausting audition. The choice was never truly hers to make. It has always been yours. We have put together a short guide about these invisible wounds. It will not fix you, and it offers no solutions. Its only purpose is to give your pain a name, to help you articulate the shape of the ghost that has been haunting you. Sometimes, naming the wound is the first step to no longer being completely defined by it. The link is below. It's free and it's honest. This feeling of being unseen is not your fault, but it is a reflection. If you have seen yourself in this story and are ready to understand what it reflects, the real work begins elsewhere. The healing is not about them. It's about understanding why you were waiting in the first place, and why the silence hurt more than any words could. That conversation, the one that happens after the diagnosis, starts on the other side.